So, one of these tips has nothing to do with lifting weights, but has significantly boosted my strength more than anything else. Today, I'm going to share 5 simple tips that have dramatically increased my gym performance over the last 15 years from when I was in plateaus and just learning about strength training and nutrition, and they just gave me those aha moments. And after I applied them, they made a gigantic difference. And I want to save you that 15 years of time and drop those 5 tips here now. So, first tip that I want to drop into is going to be even distribution of volume. Now, what does that mean, Basil? So what that means essentially is even distribution of volume would be making sure that the total volume to a specific muscle group we are trying to hit is even. Okay, so for me, coming from more so bodybuilding, your volume on muscle groups should be even. My caveat to this was I would measure body shape and size and use the golden ratio to see the size of everything. And just for example of this video, let's say to hit that perfect, quotations, perfect circumference around my shoulders, I needed to add an inch this year. And to have my thighs or my legs be the right size, I need to add 2 inches. Then I would add more volume to my legs, because in bodybuilding, for size specifically, I needed to add more size to my legs. So my split would be probably 3 upper days, all split between push-pull. I'm a big protagonist-antagonist muscle group training, and 2 leg days, one very specifically quad focused, anterior chain, one very heavily hamstring focused, posterior chain. And I found that even distribution of volume allows your body the appropriate time to recover certain muscle groups. Training volume is going to be different for everyone, whether depending on whether you're beginner or advanced. 10 to 12 sets total probably on a muscle group for a beginner, a larger muscle group, and somebody who's more advanced, probably doing somewhere in the range of 16 to 20 sets per muscle group. I would suggest those sets be like sets of 5. So you're not moving and running around and hitting all these different pieces of equipment, because you're just going to be in the gym forever then. If you could pick like your 4 favorite movements for something and do 4 to 5 sets on each one, I mean, you're just going to be able to bang out that workout. That's the thing, as you get more advanced, we don't want to be spending 2-3 hours in the gym anymore, but we want to get really specific and hit those groups hard, so that we stimulate them and they grow. Tip number 2, slow and controlled movements. It doesn't matter to me what anyone says, man. Like, yeah, you have muscle growth, but muscle is innervated by your nerves, and just controlling that movement throughout the whole range of motion is going to spread that tension and muscle adaptation across the entire tissue, instead of just in like an isolated spot if you're exploding through a movement. Or I see a lot of beginners, again, I'm not judging you at all, guys, do what you gotta do, but you're trying to throw around weights, swing around bigger weights than you actually need. And the first book I picked up, man, was Arnold's Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding. And if me as 22-year-old kid, when I was 22, could see pictures of Arnold doing bicep curls with 25 and be like, oh, that's not that much weight and he's that big. Like, you should be, that's just subjective. Like, how does your brain not put those pieces together? Like, you don't need a lot of weight. Time under tension. Okay, so in most range of motions, if you can control the weight, full stretch, maximum contraction, hold that contraction for a second or two, repeat the rep. Doing that, in my opinion, helped my muscle grow more than anything else. And my soreness, I think, after that kind of training really went away. Tip number 3. This one is pulled from our boy Louis Simmons, produced probably the most powerlifting athletes in the world. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So as I was going to school for kines and started seeing anatomy, like, when we start training, we're only thinking about these really big muscle groups, your pectoralis major, your chest, right? Your latissimus dorsi, your lats, traps. Like, we're only thinking about these big muscle groups when we train, biceps, triceps, but we never think about like the small little intricate ones that are stabilizers and they tie everything together. And the whole concept behind this idea is, say you're barbell squatting with weight on your back and you feel like your lower back can't hold the weight. Well, let's test that. Let's start doing some like reverse hypers or Supermans to strengthen all the erectors in your spine for a couple weeks, and then go back to that squat, because I'm sure you could hop on the leg press and press way more weight. You know, so like your legs are strong, but there are pieces between your feet and the floor and your head that can't, in your posterior chain, that can't hold that weight up, and you collapse under that weight. So literally all those little intricate movements that help tie everything together, I would always build those into my programs at the end as like accessory movements after I did like my main compounds and my supersets, just because if I didn't program it in, I knew I would skip it. So things like Y raises, Pavlov holds, things that basically challenge my body in every plane of motion. I'll definitely make a video on planes of motion as well, because most people going to the gym strength training, you're only training your sagittal plane. That's this way, front, back. And that leaves a lot of weakness in every other plane of motion that you're not strong in. So if something taps the side of your knee while you're squatting, or if you twist your body funny when you're moving boxes, like, yeah, sure, you're really trained at a movement and you can pick up 400 or 500 pounds, but can you do that with rotation? No forces? Probably not, because you haven't trained for it. And I've kind of evolved this into like the idea of like functional bodybuilding, which has more of a premise of longevity behind it. Now, here are the two that don't really have to do with weightlifting, but really, really starting out for sure made a huge difference. Tip number 4 is adding the right types of carbs at the right time around my training window. So let's break that down a little bit, because this is kind of like, other than the maxing protein synthesis post-training, the only other time where like I'd really, really get on somebody about nutrition timing, and that's your carbs. So you want to consume probably a big chunk of your carbohydrates during the day around training, partially because carbs hold on the water and you're going to need that when you train as well. But most of the movements we do in strength training are glucose based. Now, if you're training hard and your training bouts are hour and a half to 2 hours long, then likely some intra carbs will help you perform better at the end of your workout. So like as you're depleting carbs during your workout, consuming during will keep them high so you can train at this consistent output for the entire length of your training session, thus getting more out of that training session. And then with your post-workout meal protein, making sure that we're consuming carbohydrates. Now, the type of carbohydrates, again, it's dependent on person, GI distress, a lot of things, but generally, as a starting point, I would suggest that we do a mix of like complex simple carbs before, simple during, and simple post. Simple just because it's easier to absorb, meaning your body, it will just go straight to the stomach, into the bloodstream. Your body probably won't even store the glucose. It'll just burn it up in the bloodstream because you're currently being active. And thus it doesn't need to spike your insulin because it doesn't need to store that glucose. So don't be worried about weight, because here we're worried about performance and moving and lifting heavy weight. So having that proper fuel is huge. Just the most general rule as a starting point is you should be consuming like 1 gram of carb per hour or per minute. So that's 60 grams an hour. Hence why, again, and Gatorade's not the perfect fuel, but it's why there's roughly 60 grams of carbs in a Gatorade. So that's one thing. Obviously, our body size makes a difference. The type of training we're doing makes a difference. And all those things need a higher level of eyes and adjustment, or just time. As you do it more, you play with it, and you see what works best for you. Now, tip number 5. This tip is probably for the beginning of like my entire journey. Something I went through when I was young, but taking rest days, man, like you think if you work out every day, you're going to make the most progress. And that would make sense, but you're burnt out, and you might not think you're burnt out because you think you're super alpha, elite, I'm a workhorse, and you probably are, but taking that day off will actually help your autonomic nervous system reset. And you'll come back to the gym with just way more power. And if you're a more advanced trainer, you will probably significantly notice this. Most recently, my splits have ended up being like 4 days on and a day off, 4 days on, a day off. And if something came up within those 4 days and I couldn't make it, I would just take the day off and continue wherever I left off in the 4-day split. But that rest really, really significantly helps the body recover, rebuild that muscle, especially if you're sleeping well, you're eating right, and the active recovery is just like a walk. So those are my 5 tips that have transformed my training. And I'd be curious to know, out of these 5, which one you're going to try first. Drop it in the comments below. I'd love to go deeper on something if you have questions. If you found this helpful, hit the like button, subscribe for more strength training tips, exercise demos. Heck, channel's young. We'll see where it goes, but stay strong, guys. Peace.